Trump re-election, Americans rewarded the president for empowering a pandemic to ruin their lives. There's no doubt that COVID-19 is one of the most significant crises in US history. Now, I'm here to express and defend the view that Donald Trump, through his first White House administration, created the room for the pandemic to be so devastating. It's one reason I think it's appalling for Americans to have re-elected Trump as their president, and even while the crisis he created still lasts. Kindly give me attention to make my points. Before we go ahead to hit this point, let's see how COVID-19 compares with a few other major crises in the history of the country. Comparing COVID with other major crises in US history. Let's use fatalities as a single parameter for a quick comparison. This is for enhanced simplicity and comprehension. Because I'm writing this mainly for the street, for the American public, and I want them to assimilate the information as easily as possible. So I want to make it simple. Data from Worldometer shows that no less than 1,219,487 American lives have been confirmed lost due to COVID-19 as of April 2024. This is America's share from the pandemic's 7,010,081 global death toll. Going by this authoritative account, America's share of global COVID-19 deaths is 17.4%. What fraction of Americans were lost to the pandemic then? Let's express the US COVID-19 death toll as a percentage of the US population in the 2020 census. Accordingly, figures from the US Census Bureau show a resident population estimate of 331,449,281 on April 1, 2020. With 1,219,487 Americans having been lost to the pandemic by April 2024, the percentage of the US COVID deaths to the US population in 2020 is 0.37%. Now, see how this compares with other major crises in the history of the country. World War II. Wikipedia's World War II casualties page shows that a total of 419,400 Americans lost their lives to the war. This is America's share of this estimated 70 to 85 million deaths worldwide during the war, according to the same source. Using the mean value of 77.5 million global deaths from the above account, America's share of the global fatalities is 0.54%. Compare this with the 17.4% death share due to COVID and imagine the following. 1. What would have happened if Trump was America's president during the Second World War? 2. Also imagine how COVID-19 could have been a lot less damaging if a more serious White House team had handled it. 3. Also imagine what would have happened to America, in the face of another crisis of World War II's proportions with Trump as president. Of course, you know the possibility is high. Just as the United States was a major target during the Second World War, so is the country a major target now to many belligerent nations. The Wikipedia account also shows that the World War II deaths represent 0.32% of the US population in 1939 when the hostilities kicked off. By comparison, COVID-19 deaths represent 0.37% of the US population in 2020, the main year of the pandemic. That is, by using the death toll according to Worldometer divided by the census figure in 2020 according to Census Bureau multiplied by 100. Therefore, using the fatalities as a parameter, COVID-19 is a much greater crisis. It's clearly a much greater crisis to the US than the Second World War. Another major crisis we want to compare it with is the Spanish flu of 1918 to 1920. Another public health crisis I can find in US history comparable to COVID-19 is the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic, which killed an estimated 675,000 Americans according to a Pan-American Health Organization. Compare this to COVID-19's 1,219,487 deaths. Although the percentage of Americans lost to the Spanish flu, which is 0.65% based on US Census Bureau's population estimate of 103,208,000 in 1918. Although this is significantly higher than the percentage lost to COVID, which is 0.37% as we saw just now. There had been tremendous advancement in health and emergency response technologies during the intervening century, which thoroughly dwarfs what may seem to be an advantage in favor of COVID in this respect. For example, according to a National Library of Medicine's document, the Spanish flu had an overall mortality rate of 2.5% compared to COVID's 2.4%. Yet, with poorly developed diagnostic tech, zero vaccines and antiviral medication, limited communication and data collection capabilities in 1918 compared to 2020, the US managed to keep the death toll that low. Another crisis is 9/11, so let's compare. Data from Statista reveals that 9/11 represents the deadliest terrorist attack all over the world between 1970 and 2024. But 9/11's death toll of 2,977 American citizens and residents, according to Britannica, is much dwarfed by COVID's 1,219,487. All these are meant to establish that COVID-19 has been one of the most significant crises in US history. It was more of a crisis than most crises people consider major. So what? The Trump administration's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic has been widely criticized, and several actions and statements made by Donald Trump, then President Donald Trump, have contributed to this perception. So it's safe to conclude that Trump's carelessness gave the pandemic the teeth to bite so deeply. How did Trump's personal attitudes and decisions as a US president bolster the effect of COVID-19 then? It started way back in May 2018 with the then President Trump disbanding the White House Pandemic Response Team, which had been established by the Obama administration in 2015 to coordinate the US federal government's response to possible pandemic outbreaks. The head of the Pandemic Response Team, Timothy Zimmer, had resigned from the Trump administration as a result of this, clearly in protest. So far, my personal appreciation is that Trump disbanded the team mainly to get back at President Barack Obama. I can't find any other reason why he took such a decision. But the lacuna left by the action was what the bio-attack called COVID-19 eventually exploited. You can see, just within a year's space, the stroke today is all history that has over 1.2 million Americans dead. As if that gaffe wasn't enough, President Trump terribly downplayed the severity of the pandemic when it first showed up. A mistake should make someone more careful, but this one didn't, stating that it was totally under control as reported on January 22, 2020, and that it's going to be just fine. Trump also compared COVID-19 to a seasonal flu, tweeting so complacently that, and I quote, the virus hopefully becomes weaker with warmer weather and then gone. Where did he get all these things from? He even admitted on another occasion that he wanted to always play it down, as reported by Forbes once. So it's no wonder that the Trump administration, the first Trump administration, was so slow to roll out testing and provide necessary supplies, such as masks and ventilators, to states and healthcare systems. Trump claimed that, and I quote, anybody right now and yesterday, anybody that needs a test gets a test. As of March 2020, he said that after visiting a CDC facility in Georgia, in Atlanta, Georgia. But this has been found to be inaccurate. Even more irresponsible of the administration even after it became obvious that the pandemic was far more severe than it claimed. It still went ahead to promote unproven treatments for it, such as hydroxychloroquine, and even suggested injecting disinfectant as a potential treatment, prompting the manufacturer of Lysol to issue a warning against doing so. What else could be more irresponsible than this? Can someone tell me what else could have been more irresponsible than this in such a situation? To crown it all, throughout the pandemic, Trump sent conflicting messages about the severity of the virus, effectiveness of mitigation measures, and the state of the federal response. He also shifted blame to states, the media, and the World Health Organization, rather than taking accountability for his administration's actions. He's back to it, blaming immigrants, past administrations, and everyone but himself for every problem. But amid all this, what I can't understand is that this is the exact person who merited the re-election just 4 years after all these things happened. I mean, what sort of country does that? Well, note, this is a part of my video book series entitled The Hypocrisy of Democracy: How Most of the World Will See the US with Trump in the Saddle Again. You can join this on YouTube or email drdes101@gmail.com to join a WhatsApp platform where the YouTube updates will be shared no more than 2 times a week. Thank you.